Hey, welcome back. We're here today with Rick Dyer. Just got his third term as County Commissioner here for Jackson County. Rick, how you doing?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming, by the way. Thank you for your time. And, I mean, we're here with the Forged Performance podcast that we're starting out, and really want to talk about, your upbringing when you moved to the Valley, kind of your success in sports, things like that, and then, go into how you sort of pursued your dreams to be the county commissioner. So tell us about you, Rick. How was your upbringing? How were you as a kid?
Well, I moved up here in junior high school, beginning junior high school, 7th grade. I moved up from Southern California.
Where at in Southern California?
Pomona.
Okay, so I'm from Riverside.
Okay,
Yeah.
So a little further east,
Yep.
yeah. And it was a much different world than what we moved up to here.
Yes.
And, you come up here, you're the new kid, and making friends can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the one thing that I did immediately is I got into sports, which I was into sports in Southern California, but joined the basketball team, and you immediately make friends.
Yeah.
You just have that team camaraderie. Again, you're all part of working for the same goals, and it really bonds kids. So that was one of the things that when I first moved here really helped me acclimate. And that was at Lincoln Savage Junior High School in Williams, Murphy, Oregon, actually. Yeah, so after Lincoln Savage, I moved on to Hidden Valley High School, and I played basketball and baseball there. And again, a lot of the things I take away from my years in school are what I learned in sports. Yeah. And again, that's teamwork, working with other people, setting goals for a common goal. And again, the discipline that you learn, sometimes the last thing you want to do is go to practice. But for you to be a successful athlete and for your team to be successful, it's important that you do that. Yeah. And again, those are things that I think kids take with them and use, again, to bolster their success as they go on in life. And it certainly did for me, and that's why I've been such a big advocate of sports.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, I could probably name one or two coaches in my lifetime, and I mean, I wrestled all through high school. I started when I was 6. I raced BMX, and I have a couple mentors in a couple different arenas and sports that I did that made a huge difference in my life. So for you, I mean, obviously, probably your parents had a big influence on you growing up, as mine did, and some coaches. So what are some coaches that maybe stand out to you that helped propel you to that, or helped you see a bigger vision of yourself than you saw of yourself, right?
Yeah, the coaches that I had, very good coaches, and again, they instilled some of the things I talked about, the discipline and teamwork and goal setting. I don't think I truly appreciated what they were trying to do until later on.
Right.
You kind of think, this guy's kind of hard on me. I don't think I needed to run that, or I didn't think I needed to yell at me, but you get it. Yeah. You understand that they're trying to make you better.
Right.
And my basketball coach, Al Mueller, I had him, he actually moved up with our class, our freshman team, JV team, all the way to varsity. Again, not somebody that I really truly appreciated at the time, but looking back, he was a shaper of a lot of young men, and I still have close relationships with a lot of the kids that I played basketball with, and there's a lot of successful adults that came from that program. Yeah. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah. How about your parents? I mean, what was your dad like growing up? I mean, I know for me personally, right, my dad was hard on me in certain things and wanted me to excel. And I mean, I remember there's tournaments that I went to that maybe I got second place out of 50 or 60 kids. I got yelled at and in trouble for it. And I didn't appreciate it then, like you talked about with the coaches. But looking back on it, I went, he was holding me to a higher standard of success. But it also made me, as a father now, change the way that I'm reacting to my children as they're starting to get into sports and starting to do that stuff. So how were your parents? How was your dad sort of growing up with that?
Well, my dad was a big supporter of me in athletics, but at the time, my dad, he's a PhD.
Okay.
He's still working at 83 years old. He's one of the principal staff at Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. So he was knee deep in his education and his early career. But one thing that I always remember about my dad is he found the time to go out and coach our Little League teams, and he wasn't hard, disciplinarian. He wasn't, kind of like your dad that was maybe a little bit more success driven and oriented. But he was there and he supported it. And again, you don't fully appreciate it until you look back and you know how busy your life can be.
Right.
And that extra couple hours a week is hard to find. But he was out there. He was a big influence, and still is a big influence on my life, and the example that he set, again, in his academic rigor, and just the commitment that he showed to everything that he does.
Yeah. What are some of the things, so again, sort of reflecting on myself, what are some of the things that you've taken away from your dad and your parents that you either learned a lesson of what not to do with your kids, and or took the lesson that was positive and then reacted as a father towards your children?
Well, again, my dad really instilled the importance of education, and just the dedication that involves, and I wasn't quite the same student that he was. My brother's also a PhD. Okay. I got my degree in business administration and accounting, but later on I went to law school and got my law degree. Yep. So there was again, the importance of education and the dedication and just what is required of you to do well, I think has stuck with me. And fortunately that is something that's been passed down to my son, who was a valedictorian and a high academic achiever. I think those are the things that maybe he doesn't come to you and say, hey, this is really important, you need to buckle down in school, which I'm sure I had that conversation, but every day I saw him working, and it's just something by example you learn, and it's a value that you take with you. Yeah, the standards that you set for your children, I think the standards you set for everybody around you, they're going to live to those standards, whether they're high or low. Right. Yeah. Right. You kind of mentioned you getting your law degree, so let's kind of move into adulthood. So you came out of school, you came out of high school, and then you went to college, got your degree, and then I noticed through me sort of stalking you on the internet and doing some research that you had a couple of careers before you went into law. I did. Right out of college, 1987, the job market was not great. Okay. The last thing I thought I would do is go to work at a car dealership. That wasn't even anywhere on my radar screen. The car salesman, right? Exactly, yeah. And there was a job opening with Lithia Toyota, and I needed a job. I went down there, and they hired me. My first month in the car business, I was their salesman of the month, so I had an aptitude, and I kind of got the bug. And fast forward 20 years, I was running dealerships. Yeah. The problem is, this is kind of how you define success. Originally, I defined success as earning, as having things, as making as much money as you possibly can. I found out that wasn't success for me. Right. Success for me, especially when my son was born, was having the time to spend with my son, doing the things that I thought were more important. I coached his teams, and I coached a lot of young men that I think hopefully I had kind of the same influence, and they'll take with them some valuable things that'll help them later on in life. And so I pivoted from that, and I decided, well, if I'm not going to sell cars, I need to do something. So I decided to go to law school when I was 42 years old. Okay. Not something I would recommend to everybody, but one thing that I also learned from my dad and from coaches is once you start something, you finish it. Right. Even if you don't feel like it. I think that's a huge importance that most kids miss today. Yeah, absolutely. And there were times that I was to myself asking, what am I doing? This is crazy. I'm trying to run a business. Yeah. That's the other part of that. I opened a business at the same time to make a living while going to law school. Perfect timing. Yeah. Well, especially since it was 2008, and it was the worst time to own a business, especially trying to operate a new business. Yeah. But I persevered through it. It was 4 hard years. And then I took the California bar exam and passed it on the first attempt. And it was, an accomplishment that I can look back on and really be proud of, but also know that those values that were instilled in me from my dad, from my coaches, helped me persevere. Yeah. And that bar exam's not easy.
right?
Yeah, to say the least. It's 3 days of complete agony. There were more than one of the people taking that bar exam that left the exam site in tears before it was over.
Wow.
It's grueling.
Yeah.
But I think being a little older student too helps.
Yeah.
You got a little more perspective. But it was difficult, and again, something that I'm extremely proud of, and one thing that I tell kids that I coach or my own son is this sounds cliche, it sounds like a speech at a graduation, but there's nothing you can't accomplish if you just say, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And law school was one of those things. I've done that a lot in my life where I've taken on something that people say, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But as long as you know you're going to have the perseverance to see it through, there really isn't anything you can't achieve.
Yeah, and I mean, I've lived my life in a way, and you'll probably relate to this, where to me the word can't means I choose not to.
Yeah.
Because you can accomplish anything. And then also, your self-talk's a big thing. So whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you're right. Right? So talking through some of that with the law, with taking the bar and doing things like that, what did you have to consciously switch that subconscious self-talk? Because we all have the negative Nancy in the back of our head going, what are you doing? Right?
Well, my self-talk was mainly, you said you're going to do this.
Right.
And if you decide to quit now, everything that you said and everything you believed about yourself may not be accurate, may not be true anymore.
Yeah.
So those times that I had to get through the really tough periods, and there were a lot of them because, like I say, the rigor is amazingly difficult. But those are the things that help me push through. And again, I do attribute a lot of that to what you learn in athletics. Mm-hmm. And if you give up, you're giving up on yourself, but you're also giving up on your teammates.
Yeah.
And with me, my team was my family. Yeah. And I'm not going to give up my family, so push me through.
Yeah, and I've seen, being on teams, and then I know basketball, there's always those one or two people that are on the team that create the momentum, create the energy, create all that stuff. Yeah. And if you're one of those people, or even not one of those people, and your energy's low, it could bring down the energy of the team and getting that going. How has that transitioned for you into? I mean, you just won your third term for the county commissioner. What was that like going through? What made you decide to become county commissioner 3 terms ago? 12 years ago, right? It's a 4-year term.
Actually, it was 8 years ago is when I originally decided after my third term. It will have been 12 years.
Got it.
It's another one of those things where you kind of just say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And all I need to do is figure out what's the path to get there. And as long as you don't give up,
right.
As long as you keep pushing through, it's possible. And when I was in law school, I had a friend of mine who said, boy, we really need some good people in local government. He said, there's a position that we'd like you to run for on the Rogue Valley Transportation District Board. Okay. I said, well, what is that? And so I ran, and I won, and I got into local government, and I found out how important it was. Yeah. And I thought, I had an aptitude for it. I was going to finish law school at that time, and those are things that are very important for our local leaders and elected officials to have that knowledge base. I think is very important. So I ran and won a second term with RVTD, but shortly after that, there were 2 commissioners who were going to retire. And I said to the same friend, I said, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for one of those. And the first thing that was told me is, are you sure? Do you understand what this entails? Right. And I said, no, I have no idea, but I am sure. I want to do it. Yeah. And fast forward, I had great people behind me. I worked hard to gain the support. Being somebody that was more or less an unknown, you really had to go knock on doors and talk to people and convince them you're the guy for it. And again, fast forward, here I am, was just elected for a 3rd term, and I'm enjoying it, and I really feel again, if you go back to success and what's your definition of success, you're not going to get rich, but you sure have a feeling and a sense of satisfaction when at the end of the day you say, boy, I think I did something today that impacted people's lives positively. Right. So to me, that is my definition of success now.
Yeah, and sort of build onto that, I mean, mine has always been influence on people, right? The more people you can influence in a positive way is the definition of success. Right. Which, I mean, why you coached, why I've coached, right, with the wrestling team and stuff like that. But now, through 2020, through the COVID era, I know that you were a big advocate for sports. I know that you spearheaded the Let Them Play campaign and all that stuff. And I mean, I know that I was writing the letters that were being put out there, sending them up to Salem, and I know a lot of the parents were, and things like that. So we appreciate you with, locally in the sports to making sure the kids still have a place to go. We actually had a kid who wouldn't have graduated. He would have eventually gotten his GED, but wouldn't have graduated without wrestling being able to be on the table for him. And once it was, he had about a week to get his grades together and to get that stuff done. He worked with the athletic director at the school, was phenomenal at South, and was able to graduate. And now, it's a few years after that, and I saw him a couple weeks ago, and he's like, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I had a similar experience with a kid who's a senior at North this year, and he had some academic issues, and the reason that he buckled down and got the work done he needed to is because he wanted to play basketball again. Yeah. And he's back out there on the floor excelling, and I've spoken to him a few times, and no bigger smile than a kid who, again, overcame some adversity. Yeah. And again, that's a lesson that was taught to him through athletics. Yeah. And that is why we work so hard. We understood COVID had many dangers and many very real impacts on people. Yep. But just as real and maybe more long-lasting were the impacts that were potentially going to be these kids were going to experience. Yep. Because they didn't get the opportunity, they didn't get the mentorship, they didn't learn the same leadership principles, all the things we talked about, and those are vital to the development of a lot of these young kids and their future opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, neither one of us are doctors, so the medical fear and the impact on people was real, and the data was real, and we had to figure out how to live a normal life through that. And I agree with you that getting rid of sports, getting rid of the camaraderie that these kids have when they go to school, I mean, for a lot of kids, and you could probably speak on this better than I can, but I think for a lot of children, not just in the Valley, but throughout the country, school is their safe place to go because maybe their home life isn't very good. I mean, I know that, I know at some of the elementary schools that the breakfast that they're served at school is the only meal they're going to eat throughout the day, right? Just because of their environment and what it is, and it's not a fault on anybody. It's just the reality that they live.
No, that's absolutely true, and hand in hand with that goes the relationships that they build and those relationships that they need through sports. Sometimes the only positive adult role model they have may be their coach. Yeah. And that's not a slam on parents. Some of them aren't equipped. Yeah. They don't have the skills that maybe a coach or a teacher has, and to take that interest in a kid who needs that. If they don't get that, we know what can happen. Yep. We see it. Yep. And I don't know how many kids were lost during COVID that we're not going to get back. Yeah. And that's sad. Yeah. And it's going to be something that we see the impacts of for generations. Yep. And these are all the warnings. My thing wasn't ignore COVID. It's not. I never said COVID's not. What we said was we need to balance our policy. Right. We need to make sure we balance what we anticipate, because nobody knew what the real impacts were going to be of either. Yeah. Whether it's COVID or having kids not being in school and athletics. But we need to balance the policy, and these kids need to have a voice. They need to be represented as well. Yeah. And that was what we tried to do. Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of times too, and I'm sure you can relate to this as a father, and you were a son at one point, we just don't listen to our parents. Yeah. Right? So sometimes the coach saying the same thing our parents do is an epiphany of, oh, I never heard that before.
Right.
Right. So I know that the Mail Tribune's shut down recently, and I know that you've taken it upon yourself to sort of start something from the ground, and you have a vision of where you want it to go with SouthernOregonGrapevine.com, right?
Right.
Tell us about that and kind of what made you go, I think we want to do this too.
Well, part of what I think motivates and inspires kids is everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to be recognized for achieving the things that they work hard to do. And local media, I know when I was a kid growing up, one of the things that I always, when I was in elementary school and junior high, is can't wait till I'm on the varsity team and I get my name in the paper, and people get to hear about the things that I'm doing. When the Mail Tribune left, my thought was that's going to be taken away again, and that's something that these kids deserve. They have worked hard. Yeah. They deserve that recognition. So that was my main impetus for calling Ryan Mallory and saying, can you help me with this? And he, of course, was like, absolutely. Yeah. And that day, we were doing reporting on games. Yeah. And there are so many parents and kids that say, thank you. Boy, this is, we thought we were going to lose this. And we've actually expanded the coverage into a lot of areas that even the newspaper didn't cover. Sports that maybe got neglected in that coverage, and it's great to see kids. Our athlete of the week this week, the leader is a bowler. Yeah. How often do you see that? Yeah. But those kids work just as hard.
I didn't even know that the high schools had a bowling team until recently. So,
so there you go. And again, how often do those kids get recognized? Yeah. So it's kind of nice to be able to take this even a step further, and reach more kids, more families.
Well, and maybe even a step further, because the Mail Tribune was doing the best of the best for the local businesses, and there's a lot of small local businesses that are in town that, I was, before they took away the category this last year, I was on the top 5 for my category for since I moved up here, and it wasn't a big deal until somebody in the paper read about you, and then it's a big deal. Right. So that recognition does have, I think, a lot to do with success for not just the kids, but I think for small businesses. And I told you before that I want to get involved and kind of help out with the Grapevine, the Southern Oregon Grapevine website, and how do I help with that, because my technical ability isn't like Ryan's, right? So, but yeah, sort of wrapping everything up, Rick. I appreciate your time, but with a kid or with somebody who maybe is stuck in this 9-to-5 working W-2 but has bigger dreams but has suppressed it, and they want to move forward into their goals and dreams and get to the lifestyle they really want, right? Whether their level of success is being able to spend time with their kids, or be able to coach, or be able to influence, or just being able to have control of their time and their schedule, what would be your advice, or what would you write a letter back to your 18-year-old self?
Well, you just got to step past the fear, because it's scary and it's difficult. And again, I don't want to quote a Nike slogan, but you just do it. Yeah. You just do it. You just say, this is what I want, because the last thing somebody, I think, wants to do is to look back 20 years later and say, boy, I had that opportunity where I really thought about doing this, and I know I would have been happier. For me, leaving the car business meant spending the time with my son and coaching. And looking back in the last 18 years, there is no better decision I made. And it was difficult. We took it took a cut in our lifestyle. Yeah. But overall, in the long run, there is no better decision. So just do it. Yeah. Just make that move.
Step through the fear and just make it happen, because your why is bigger than the how to or the what to.
Exactly. And again, bringing this back to success, if I would have stayed in the car business and I owned 10, 15 dealerships right now, and I was making $10 million a year, I would have been not 1/10 the success I feel I am now, because I was able to, again, raise my son, be present, spend time influencing kids I was around in the community, and now I'm in a job where, like I say, every day I can go in and be happy and satisfied that I think I did something good for our community.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely,
And,
thank you.
Yeah, and we look forward to more success and more stuff, and helping the community more and more and more. Appreciate you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank